Hey there, how are ya? I'm Robert from Master Guitar Academy. Welcome to another Q&A video. The question this time is from Alex in Oregon, and he asked me, how do you use the diminished scale in blues? Well, there are a few ways you can do that, but I'm going to cover perhaps the most common approach in this lesson, which is playing ideas coming from the diminished scale, starting with a half step above the one chord. So hopefully you could hear that the second lick is the diminished idea, taking us from the one chord to the four chord. Now, before we have a look at the details of these ideas, I just want to mention that you can submit a comment right here, and I'll do my best to answer your question. And you can also visit my website, Master Guitar Academy. There's a link in the description on YouTube where you can also submit a question and you can check out more of my work there. All right, so let's get to it. So we're going to play three licks, and the most interesting one here is, of course, the second lick, which is using the diminished scale. So let's talk about that first. Over dominant 7 chords, especially when you're going from the one chord, which is in this case is E7, to the 4 chord, which in this case is A7, it's very common in jazz and fusion and that type of style of music to play the diminished scale on this just before you go to the 4 chord, while you're on the 1 chord. And that's what I'm doing here. In the second measure, I'm going into diminished land, so to speak. Now, there are two ways you can look at the diminished scale. The diminished scale is completely symmetrical. It consists of half step, whole step, half step, whole step, and so on, forever. So the two ways you can look at it is to either start with a half step or you start with a whole step. Other than that, they're the same, right? So when you play over a dominant 7 chord, you would start with a half step. So if we play open E string at the bottom here, a half step would be F. And in order to continue its design, I play a whole step, right? Half, whole, half, whole, half, whole. And I'm back up here on the octave. So that creates that sound. And that's a common approach to use that scale over that dominant chord just before you go to the 4 chord. Now, the other way you could view it is you start with a whole step. And it would sound different in this case because then I would play like this. And that is the diminished scale that you can use over an E minor, actually. But you wouldn't use that design or that version of it if you play on a dominant 7 chord. So keep that in mind. Dominant 7 chord, half step is how you start from the root note. And if it's a minor chord, you start with a whole step. But in this case, there are no minor chords, so we're going to stick to the starting with the half step. All right, so since it's a symmetrical scale, you can do all sorts of cool things with the diminished scale. So I'm going to show you one approach. That's pretty common. So if we look again at the design of it, if we play 3 notes, starting with a half step, you see the third note is 3 frets above the one I started on. And that's called a minor third if you look at the interval. So we can play it actually, those 2 together like this. Same thing as this. Right? Now we can then play another minor third a half step above that, because if we look at the design of the scale, here will be the 4th note, and it's a minor third above the 2nd note, right? So those 2 together, here's a minor third, and here's the next minor third. Now shift everything a whole step and do a minor third again, then a half step, and so on. So it repeats. So you could play it like, right? It's just very symmetrical. So that's one approach for this, and that's what I'm using for this lick that I'm playing, the second one. So the first one, and then I'm using that approach to take me from E7 over to A7, and I'm ending on the major third for A7. So there, if you look at the first note, I do slide in up to E here, and then this note is the minor third. So these 2 together is a minor third. You can view it as a grip. It's the same as this, right? So we can take this and move it half step, whole step, half step, whole step, and so on. Right? And that's what I'm doing in the lick. So I'm just sliding in here and then back and back up to this one, sliding it up a half step here, and repeating. And ending on that note, because then that happens over the A7. Right? So that's a cool little approach. You can do those type of things too, because it's the same distance from here to here, or here. It's the same thing as any such pattern. You can move in half, so half step, whole step. And if you play only stacked minor thirds, you get the diminished arpeggio. So each note is the same distance apart. 1.5 whole steps. That's cool too. I think shredders use that, right? That kind of stuff. Anyway, that's the second lick. So let's go back to the first one then, just to go over that briefly. I think that sounds cool. It's kind of a funky thing, and I view it as a Dorian lick because of this note, which is the major 6. If we mix that into a minor scale, we can view it as a Dorian thing, coming from the Dorian mode. So I'm just starting on the minor third up here, back to root note, and then to the 6th, and then up to the minor third again and play it staccato, like a short. And then back to E, the root note again. So that's very simple. I tend to bend the first one a little bit because the bluesy soul in me, I guess, wants to bend the thirds a little bit. And then comes so that's the first measure, right? And the second measure, that's when we throw in the diminished thing. And then ends on A7. And at that point, I'm playing a lick that I view as a hybrid scale, something I have actually a course on my website. It basically means that you combine more than one mode or one scale together, and you get more notes, but they're easy to recognize. So this is a hybrid scale that I use a lot, where we have Dorian and blues scale mixed together. You know, those kind of runs coming from that hybrid scale. So the lick I'm playing, that's the first part. So I'm doing a hammer on from the second to the major third for A. And then I play the fifth and the seventh of A, the minor seventh. And you want to play that with a kind of a swingy, funky 16th note feel. And then the second part of it, at that point I'm playing, go back to here to the third, and then up to the note D here, and then I go backwards. And then I'm playing B flat here, and then back up to B. Back to B flat, and do a slide down to A, and to G. And then I play A and G, and E, and back up to E, to G, I mean. So, again, the whole thing. And it sounds cool. So when this happens over the one chord E, then you have Dorian or Mixolydian here, and then you have blues scale here, and then pentatonic, the rest really. But I like that sound when you get the 6 and the minor, the flat 5 in there. This cool sound, the major 6 and the flat 5 together with the minor pentatonic. So that's the whole thing. 3 licks in total, where the second one is the cool one that has that more unusual sound that goes, using the diminished, goes from the 1 chord to the 4 chord. So let me play it just slowly, all 3 together, to see what that sounds like. And then you can play the same thing over and over, actually, because those 3 licks together cover this loop that I'm doing, the vamp going from E7 to A7 and back. So there you have it. All right, thanks guys for checking this out. I hope you found it useful. Let me know, okay? I'll see you next time.